lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and I got another holiday issue for you guys. I'm going to be talking about Spectacular Spider-Man 173 today. And as you can see from this cover, Doc Ock is here to ruin Christmas for Spider-Man. Another classic Christmas Spidey comic. Again, when I was doing my research, looking for cool holiday comics to share with you guys, talk about this holiday season, this one popped up, and as a huge Spider-Man fan, I made sure that I got at least 3 Spidey comics onto this list for this year. Maybe I might find more. Not sure if I'll have the time, but I did pick up this one and a couple other ones, and today we're going to be talking about this classic tale. Written by Jerry Conway and David Michelinie. Jerry Conway was on plot and scripted the first 5 pages, and David Michelinie scripted 6 through 22. Sal Buscema on art, Rick Parker on letters, Bob Sheridan on color, Jim Salicrup was editor, and Tom DeFalco was editor. Right as we jump in, we see these low lives obviously robbing somebody, and this thing coming out of the water. And as it says right here, this is Christmas Eve. But they realize, hey, maybe somebody's inside. He's got to have a few bucks. So they're just trying to come up, and they pick the wrong thing to fuck with. Because as you can see, we see Doc Ock's tentacles jumping right out at him. Say what you will about Doc Ock. There's been a few modern iterations of him that maybe don't look as dorky, but I'm a fan of this dorky look because he can be a terrifying villain, but he can also just be just an idiot for as smart as he is. He gets foiled by Spider-Man constantly. You know, he has one mission tonight, right? He doesn't want to waste his time with those guys. So what does he do? We don't see what he does, but we sure as fuck hear it. Snap, snap, snap. So he just snapped these dudes' necks. He's ruthless. As we flip, we learn what his whole goal is for the night. He wants to see Aunt May, and anybody that knows their Spidey history knows that at one point, Otto Octavius was gonna marry Aunt May, and that didn't happen. But he's still in love with her, and he makes his driver terrified him. You can see him sweating it out in the front seat, or he decides to take Otto over to Aunt May's house, and you already know that's not going to end well, right? So we get to the May Parker's residence. We see Willie Lumpkin. You guys may recognize that name because he was one of the posts. Stan Lee played Willie in one of the Marvel movies. I can't remember off top, but he did play the famous mailman from Marvel Comics. And we get MJ and her cousin Christy. And I'm not as familiar with Christy because I haven't read all these old Spidey comics, but it's interesting to learn a little bit about her just from this issue that she was dealing with anorexia. And I'm sure that had to have been kind of a heavy storyline when they were talking about that, because I don't think I've seen much of that topic in comic books. But it's it's cool to see that. It's cool to learn a little bit more about her because I did read another issue with her in it from Amazing Spider-Man recently, and I don't really remember much of her. I don't remember seeing her much. And we see MJ looking up at the clock, wondering where Peter is. And as always, he's late. He's got other things to do. I believe they're living with Aunt May at the time too, so he's trying to scrounge whatever money he can, and he's off to the Daily Bugle to see if he can see if he can sell some pictures, right? And I love the influence that McFarlane has had because we're seeing other artists, bring in the spaghetti webbing and do a little bit of the bigger eyes. And as he's swinging through the city, he stops a mugging as these guys are trying to rob a Santa of all things to rob. And even as these guys were humiliating him because of a billboard where he's holding a little puppy, he keeps himself calm and webs them up. And then we see this sleazebag that works for the Daily Bugle as a photographer as well, and he films Spidey doing it. And as Peter's spider sense goes off, he yells out to Spidey that he's going to sell it to Jameson as Spider-Man assaulting innocent kids out for holiday fun. Now I don't know Nick Katzenberg. I don't know the character. I learned just in this issue that he worked at the Daily Bugle, but I mean, just to look at him, he just looks like a sleazebag. Like while I've read some Sal Buscema Spidey work, I really enjoy this issue because I don't think I've read as much Sal Buscema as I once thought I did. But I love his Spidey. I really love this story because Spider-Man's just swinging through the city and he's stressed and he's stopping his crime and he's trying to keep himself calm. And we see Nick Katz. Before we get back to Peter, we see Nick Katzenberg, and he's paying for some information from this homeless guy, but we don't really quite know what information he's trying to get. We just know that he thinks it's going to be his big score. He's heading off to the Christmas Bugle party. Peter gets there and is obviously shocked. We see J. Jonah Jameson as Santa Claus. That's the last person you would think would be trying to have a good time and dressing as Santa. Gives Peter his Christmas present, and it's funny as they exchange it, they ended up getting each other the same tie. And we see that what he has in the back for MJ, he got her a hand carved crystal of a bird. And here comes Nick Katzenberg talking shit, and Peter's not going to have it this time. And he elbows him, but in doing so, knocks down the bird. Again, Katzenberg with another verbal jab, and Peter loses it, slams him into the punch bowl. Very uncharacteristic of Peter, but you can see that the stress of the holidays, the stress of, having been kicked out of their apartment and living without May is still affecting him. And they help Katzenberg up reluctantly, even though he's a jerk and doesn't really deserve it. And all Jameson cares about is who's going to clean up the mess. Peter doesn't, he lost his head and he realizes he could have hurt someone. Sees a limo parked out front, and this is where it all ties back in to the beginning of the story. Doc Ock is there staring at the window, and Spidey doesn't obviously thinks he's there for trouble, right? But Doc Ock is just looking lovingly at Aunt May and realizes, the best thing he can do is give her a peaceful and undisturbed Christmas Eve. Then we get a classic Spidey Doc Ock battle. Even though he didn't come there to fight, in his current frame of mind, it's a welcome fight for Doc Ock. They duke it out, and this is just a fun, like I said, just a fun little classic Spidey tale. I love as we get here, Doc Ock's got the tentacle wrapped around Peter's neck. He's got his hand around his throat, and Aunt May comes out, and Otto apologizes. And they decide to go, and Spidey said, yeah, you can count on it. We'll deal with this another time. And he sees that, Otto does seem sorry. And it's strange. It even seems a little sad. And Aunt May says something to Peter that, kind of weighs heavy on him. She says, the papers say you're a hero, but if you drove poor Otto away, and then before she finishes, he says he's not sure he is a hero. And maybe on Christmas Eve, no one's a hero or a villain. And it kind of ends on, a note that, leads into another storyline, because we see, Nick Katzenberg, obviously, he took that information that he paid for, and he's got some sort of info that he's going to use to make some big bucks, right? Overall, I really enjoyed this comic. Fun little story. Kind of a cool look back at Peter in this time period, in, early 90s. One and done story. While there is an epilogue that kind of is leading to an overarching story, this is definitely one that you can read by itself. Perfect Spidey story to read during the holiday season. And if you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Throw your comments or suggestions down below, or email us thecomicloungepod@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new episode goes up. And on that note, I'm out.